All right, I got some good news. We may not have to move to Montana after all, because Alberta just told the federal government to go and FUCK themselves. Here's what they had to say. The premier of that fine province basically just said the following. Alberta will always defend law-abiding firearms owners. Today we announced a motion under the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act that makes our position clear. If passed, our province will refuse to enforce Ottawa's bullshit gun seizure plan. She didn't say bullshit. But isn't it funny how the only premier with balls happens to be a woman? Well, I guess Scott Moe is fighting for the right side of history as well. This is the post from Daniel Smith, the premier of Alberta. Now, you might be saying to yourself, I see they're promoting the hunting thing as the only legitimate reason to own a firearm. You know, there's sport shooting, but you can't technically use it for self-defense. In Canada, you can't want a gun for the purpose of that. But the Alberta Justice Minister, I thought I was in the Twilight Zone when I heard this, okay? This gave me a newfound hope. I don't know if it's part of some ulterior agenda that they're getting ready to roll out. Maybe it's so that, all of the gun owners move to Alberta and incriminate themselves when the other shoe drops. But listen to this. This is huge. This is huge. And this is the first piece of good news Canadian firearms owners have had for a long time. And honestly, I'm strongly considering moving to Alberta because they have the amount of constituents required to push back against the federal government policies. Saskatchewan, we're a little bit smaller, which is not to say that, if Alberta can't do it, we can't do it either. But this is what I was hoping for. I was hoping that they would push so far in one direction that the pendulum would swing back the other way and it would actually backfire. Let's see if this holds, but take a listen to what the Alberta Justice Minister, Mickey Amory, had to say. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. It's the first time I ever seen or heard of this individual, but man, do I like him. Here's what he had to say. In September, the federal government announced a pilot project for the firearm confiscation scheme. Our government made it clear that we would not enforce the gun grab because, simply put, this is not about public safety. It will not stop violent criminals, and it will not stop illegal guns from being smuggled across our borders. We will oppose any policy that undermines law-abiding firearms owners and does not combat the criminal use of firearms. Okay, the usual boilerplate stuff, but here is where it gets different. That's why today I'll be introducing a motion under the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act to defend lawful firearms owners and ensure Albertans know that they have the right to use reasonable force to defend themselves in their What? Hang on, wait a minute, wait a minute. Am I dreaming here? Are Canadian politicians talking about self-defense with a firearm? Hang on. Within a United Canada Act to defend a lawful firearm owners and ensure Albertans know that they have the right to use reasonable force to defend themselves, their families, and their homes from intruders if they ever need to. If passed by the legislature, the motion will instruct every single provincial entity, including law enforcement agencies, such as municipal police forces, to decline to enforce or implement the federal gun seizure program. The motion also makes clear that Albertans have the right to use reasonable force to defend themselves and their families from intruders. Now, for you Americans out there, you're probably thinking, what's the big deal? What's Nate freaking out about? This is another country. This is a complete other side of the spectrum from what we're accustomed to, where they're trying to beat the self-preservation out of us. You just had the Alberta Justice Minister make an official policy statement on behalf of the Alberta government that they are in full support of Albertans' right to defend themselves. We go in Texas, in Alberta, and it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard to stay in Saskatchewan after this unless Scott Moe follows up. Under this motion, the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services will advise law enforcement to focus on addressing violent crime. Wow, what a concept. As Alberta's Attorney General, I will regularly review directives of the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service that provide guidelines to prosecutors not to prosecute home defense offenses when it is not in the public interest. We will not hesitate to use every single tool available to protect Albertans from misguided and expensive federal policies and to respect every single Albertan's ability to protect themselves and their families in their homes. One's home is their castle. It is sacred. It is why the criminal code recognizes the invasions of one's right to their privacy in their homes. For example, as a more serious breach than other types of theft or property. And in the worst case scenario, Albertans should feel confident that they won't be thrown in jail for defending themselves and their loved ones. I mean, to hear common sense, even if it is part of some grand agenda, and the other shoe is going to drop at some point, it's just nice to hear for once. It's nice to hear. Are they setting people up to incriminate themselves and the RCMP is going to come and grab the guns and throw the book at you anyways? Who knows? Is this all a setup to officiate and codify and make it irrefutable that if you do use a gun to defend yourself, it's going to go to the Supreme Court or something, and they're going to say you absolutely cannot even think about doing something like that? I'm not sure. But we're going to celebrate this small victory. We're not going to get too overconfident, but I'm certainly going to be looking for more property in Alberta after I make this video. Even a little 80 acres, doesn't have to be anything on it. Just enough land that I can dig a hole in the ground and bury a bunch of guns. Legally, of course, storing, that would be illegal storage, technically, as long as it's behind lock and key. Just, for the record. Of course, you have to report that to the RCMP. And you get, in accordance with the firearms regulations and blah, blah, blah. The federal government's approach will not have any impact on gun crime here in this country. We know that nearly all violent gun crime is not committed by legal firearms owners, but by those who obtain weapons illegally. What a concept! Through our nation's porous borders. Turning previously legal firearms into prohibited ones does nothing to make our streets safer. What it does is it creates an environment of anarcho-tyranny, one where criminals run riot and law-abiding citizens are under the gun. Two guns, not just the guns of criminals, but the guns of government. It simply punishes those who have acted in good faith and who have proven that they know how to follow provincial and federal law. Our position is grounded in law and in principle. The Alberta Sovereignty within a United Canada Act was enacted to defend our province's interests when federal actions are unconstitutional and when they are harmful to Albertans. Interestingly, they come out with this announcement after the pipeline deal has been made with British Columbia. So I'm not sure if they were waiting to lock that in. There's 350,000 gun owners in Alberta, which means that there's 350,000 households, which means that, probably about a quarter, probably more like a third, when you factor in children and all that stuff, a third of Alberta's population are firearms owners, which is a lot. Okay, there's a lot of guns in this country, believe it or not. And this is good news, man. So I just wanted to let you guys know that there's pushback at the provincial level. Will it stick? Well, it depends on what you do. Okay, we got to keep getting the word out there. We got to keep doing what we do. And this right here is the result of what we have been doing, all of us, from the CCFR to the people who've supported the cause, who've been vocal about this, the people who've been upstanding citizens, who've been responsible firearms owners. This is the result of that pushback. We do have power in this society. Okay, there's at least, there's got to be 10% of the population, and it's a strong 10%. So never underestimate your ability to make a difference. I was about to hightail it to Montana. I mean, I still am, but as a contingency plan. But I would like to stay in this country if possible, if common sense could prevail, at least for a short time until World War III hits. And then it's every man's for himself, right? So hats off to the Alberta Premier. I don't expect you to give me an interview because, I don't want to damage your reputation. Guilt by association. What are you talking to that crazy prepper guy for? I'm sure he'll say something stupid down the road that will get him canceled, and you want to be affiliated with that. But, she's cool enough. She did get interviewed by Jordan Peterson, so maybe there's a chance. Put in a word for me if you know Danielle Smith, because I'd like to talk to her about this and see what she has to say. Thanks for watching, my friends. Stay tuned. We got World War III news coming up.